Welcome, everyone. What I'd like to do is just kick off real quick here with what our learning objectives are for today. As I mentioned a little briefly before in my introduction, is I became fascinated with the sorts of things that determine whether a project would be successful. And I found a long time ago that a huge component of that is how well the team members work together. So that is actually reported across a bunch of different sorts of projects, from information technology, custom development of systems, through Lean Six Sigma, process improvement, and implementing ERP systems. We found so there are some really pretty universal best practices that actually help teams get going. So what I want to talk about today is we'll start out talking about kind of the unique performance challenges, and also, let's be honest, there's another side of the coin. There are opportunities that we've got for intact teams. Then I'll talk about some of the things that we can actually do to break through some performance plateaus. Often you may have found when you're with a team is you tend after a certain amount of time to get to a plateau and just not a whole lot of stuff is actually going up exponentially as far as results used to. So we'll talk about, there's 4 proven group methods that we'll be talking about today that will help get beyond those performance plateaus. And then I've got a diverse set of 30 practices and tools that I've found over the years that can actually help spark some stalled team performance. So we're going to be covering those also. The way we're going to do this is through this agenda. First of all, I'll start talking about the unique challenges that intact teams pose as opposed to teams that are starting from scratch. And then we'll cover these group methods and these best practices tips in the context of 3 cases. The first case is going to be a biotechnology company that I've worked with. Another is a high-tech manufacturing company. And the third one is a software development firm. So I want you to start thinking back over time and just kind of at the start of the webinar here. And how many of you have ever felt you've been on a team that's been together for a while and you're stuck? You're not making as much progress as you had at the start of the project. You seem to get a little bit of low motivation going there. So think of that over time, and just if you could, this actually would give me an idea of response too. If you take a look at your little icons in the lower right-hand corner, we'll see a hand that's raised, and we can also, to the right of that, we see another little icon that we can put a caret on that says feedback. And if this has happened to you, just click the feedback one and hit yes. If it's not happened to you, just go click and just click on no. That'll give you an idea about the attendees here. So just take a minute to do that if you would. Okay, so I'm saying this is an issue that actually does have some some widespread kind of acceptance and that exists in the workplace. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to have you just jot down real quick a few words that would remind you of that situation, because we're going to come back to this later and apply some of the tools that we learned today. So just jot down a couple, not a whole lot, but a few keywords that you can remember when we come back. And then the second think back over time, this is almost what makes these situations a little more uncomfortable, is think of that situation. And have you ever felt that it was not safe to name the team issues that have been impeding progress? So you don't need to put your hand on this one. I'm just going to take a poll on the first one. But think about this, and again, jot down what particular situation you were in, and we'll return to that. And you can actually name some of the tools that you pick up today that you think either might have helped it then, or if you find yourself in that situation now, is that it might actually be helping you now. So what I'm showing here is kind of an airplane cockpit. And just so you know that team interaction problems, it's not just you, it's not just your project. These same team interaction problems persist, and also even when the stakes are just incredibly high. So there have been a lot of things that have come up in the past decade or so, at least, and then going back beyond that. Because I've done some work with the FAA, and so I've had some ability to take a look at some of these studies which are public. And if you take a look back way back in 1977, what started this issue was there was a Dutch airliner, KLM, that was a 747 plane that actually ended up crashing into another 747 Pan Am plane, and unfortunately, it resulted in 583 people dying. When they looked at what happened, is they found that in this situation, the crew knew exactly what was going to happen. But they told the pilot repeatedly, but the pilot really didn't take a whole lot of input from the crew. And in many ways, it was very kind of a militaristic situation back before in the cockpit, is the pilot wasn't expected to take a lot of input from folks. And so the team dynamics were not such that people thought they had a voice and they could speak up. As we take a look then, kind of fast forward, the National Transportation Safety Board, the NTSB in 1994, listed 16 different incidents where the crew knew what was going to be going on, it was going to cause an accident, and they either couldn't approach the pilot, they felt, or they approached the pilot, and the pilot disregarded them, and it caused an accident. So kind of on the positive side of that, there was an airline, there was the great airline, United Airlines 232, which is, a lot of people may remember, had a problem with hydraulic system, and it circled down from the sky. And Captain Al Haynes said the reason he was able to save so many people on that was because they had actually implemented some of the things we're going to talk about today as far as how can teams work together better. And what it's called now in the parlance of FAA, when they require everybody to do this, is it's really called CRM, which is Cockpit Resource Management. And any pilot that goes through U.S. airspace has to go through this training. So that's kind of the history of some of the sorts of things that, severe consequences still don't force people to get beyond some natural barriers that people have for interacting in a group setting. So, back to the thought of intact team performance. An intact team performance low is kind of the question, two sides of the coin. Is it a hopeless situation, or can it really be a misunderstood opportunity? And my point is, I've seen so many of these situations where the team actually gets better based on a quick restart in the middle of being an intact team. It's a misunderstood opportunity, and you can actually evolve the teams to very, very high, new levels of performance. The challenges that we got for intact teams, first of all, division can get stale, and that kind of decreases motivation for folks. Another thing, and those of you who jotted down something earlier may recognize that bad patterns of interaction, either somebody's very dominant or somebody's kind of obstinate or someone always wants to push their opinion or someone's not listening, often those behaviors become ingrained and the team gets used to performing around those. So bad patterns of interaction have become ingrained in many situations. Another issue is that people don't always have the luxury of viewing the situation and setting the rules from scratch. So it's not like you come in and say, all right, it's a green field, anything we want to do, we can do, let's go. Now, often we're kind of sitting with the situation where we say, yeah, well, we've been dealt a certain hand, how are we going to deal with that? And the last thing, and this is almost the most insidious of all of these, is non-performance ends up being so widespread that it becomes the peer-enforced norm. And nobody really wants to actually get off the dime because either they're afraid to, it's not safe, or they've just acquiesced to what's happening. So those are some of the unique challenges that we see for intact teams. There are also opportunities, and here's where we're focusing most of the effort today, is there's a big opportunity to declare from this day forward we're reinventing ourselves.